Welcome to podcast 191. Do you value productivity over capability? If so, you need to stay with us today. We have an amazing episode.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody. We have Adam Hoots here today, one of my favorite human beings on earth. The way I feel about him is kind of the way his shirt looks. Super bright. There's variety there. Comfortable. I just love this man. Anyway, Adam, say hi to the audience. Anything you want to say opening up this podcast?
Hey, y'all. I appreciate that. I will tell you, any intro from Jason is pretty awesome, and I'm very appreciative of his kind words. So thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. I'm excited to spend this next hour or so with y'all and learn some.
So I'm going to ask you, thank you. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself just a little bit, but from my perspective, and I'll stick to the human element, I need you to unhumble yourself just a little bit and tell us about some of your accolades and in history a little bit, get us used to you. But Adam always challenges me in a thoughtful, respectful way, but I always learn something. He's a lean thinker, a lean leader, and an operations guy, can run projects in basically any position, does a lot for his company from an operations standpoint, and is also involved in other organizations to better the industry and is doing some great things. And so as people are listening to this, as you guys out there who are listening to this podcast today are connecting with him, what I want you to know is that he's a very thoughtful and wise individual. And so you probably don't want to follow that, but could you give us just a little bit of a background, Adam, on your career a little bit? What are you doing? What are you passionate about? What do you love?
Yes. And so thank you, Jason. It's tough to follow that, but I am super excited to be here and share this moment with you and the podcast audience. I've been following for a while and firm believer in what your message to the group. For me personally, I started, I'll give you a quick funny story on how I got introduced to the industry. So my father, for my 17th birthday, gave me a box, huge box, bow ribbon, professionally wrapped. It was beautiful. And inside that box was boots, a hard hat, vest, all the typical PPE. And at the very bottom was a stack about an inch thick of applications to different trades. And so it basically said, welcome to being an adult. Now go pick your trade and learn a craft. And, while I hated him for that initially, it really has paid tremendous value to me. So the perspective I come from is very similar to yours, Jason, where, finishing trade, I was actually a plumber by trade. I can't say that I ever made official plumber, but was certainly, a plumber's assistant, do this, do that, turned into, ordering materials for different job sites, and really just gave me a great understanding of the day-to-day life of a true craft trade worker. And so, again, I can do a lot of plumbing myself, and I use those words. I'm not a certified plumber because I do believe in that, apprenticeship to make sure that folks really learn how to do things the right way. And so, again, I can plumb things, but I wouldn't consider myself a true plumber. I'm a plumber's helper.
Yeah. Well, if I could interject there, I never made it to journeyman cement mason. But I figured I got to like a level 4 or 5, but I figured, and this was back before my religious days, but I figured when I could do a beautiful stamped concrete job with dye and stamps, while also having been drink like a 12-pack of beer, I figured I was a journeyman. So I was like, I kind of just called myself a journeyman after a while, but I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that reminds me, we learn through experience, right? Yeah. And when we do things, we actually truly understand them. And I think some of this later on, we'll talk a little bit about that. But so here I am, right? A plumber's helper. And I think you really did it to drive me to college. I think a lot of influencers among young people these days really drive, go to college. And we hear that a lot. We don't hear a lot of go to the trades. And even my dad, again, I've referenced him a couple of times. he's an old school, hard nosed senior superintendent. He works with Whiting Turner, but he's integrated. He's kind of coming along. And so this is the life I grew up with, right? He wanted me to go to college, so I did. University of South Florida. Wanted to study architecture. That's the typical construction management approach, right? One X-Acto cut too many on my finger here, and I was done. The modeling, that stuff just wasn't for me to try and figure out how to put those little pieces together. So went to my counselor. Hey, what's the closest degree I have? Communications. Great. Public and cultural, even better. Well, what am I going to do with that? Took a class called Interview Communication. I mentioned my dad's a senior executive with Whiting Turner. One of the classes was called Interview Communication. So I went and interviewed with a local executive who happened to be the vice president for Whiting Turner in Tampa, near USF where I went. And at the end of the mock interview, he offered me a job, which again, with a communication degree, I was very blessed from that perspective. I did have the plumber's background. I did also work for an architectural firm for a couple of years while going through college, figuring out was my path. I wasn't,
Very cool.
I was a little too practical for that. So that's kind of a little bit of my perspective and where I come from. For the last 15, 20 years, I've been building clean rooms, labs, high tech, kind of more technically challenging projects, and just enjoy it. And again, I've got just a passion for craft development and making sure that we're honoring and bringing respect to our tradespeople, that they get the respect that they deserve, because it's a really, really tough business. And unless you've been out there and you've been laboring and working alongside these folks, it's really hard to understand that perspective. So
I agree. And to kind of close out as well, thank you for that introduction. And that, I think that gives some credence to your opinions. You've been in the trades. You got a dad as a senior superintendent. It's in your blood. You checked out the architecture world. Love those folks. And then, in operations, doing some pretty complex jobs. That's amazing. And you're not going to be, so I'm kind of competing with the introduction now at this point. But I was talking to Dean Reed the other day, and if anybody knows lean and DPR, like Dean Reed comes up, he's like the father of lean for a lot of us, right? And at the end of the conversation, he's like, Jason, you got to stay close to Adam. He's the guy that's going to go all the way with you guys in the direction you're headed. What better endorsement could anyone get? It's just
super humbling. That's super humbling to come from Dean Reed, but to even hear it from your mouth that Dean said it is like.
All right. So as we get this, so thank you for that. It's already fun. I just love your energy. I want to ask you a question. Most of the time, and you know this from listening to the podcast, and I appreciate that, by the way, I want to ask, what are you excited about in life? And then ask you a question that I got from a podcast listener that I like so much that I just keep answering it as best I can every episode. But what's changing in the construction industry? So I'll signpost that for you just a little bit. What I'm excited about, I just had lunch with an executive, a potential client, but kind of a mentor, actually. And he helped me see something that was neat. Sometimes you've heard me say, leaders need to be at the helm of the ship, right? They're not always swabbing the decks and stuff because they want to be humble, right? They need to be steering away from icebergs. He gave me a really neat analogy, which was also a ship analogy. I just happen to like ship analogies, but he said, when leaders are like, this is where I'm going, I'm steering in this direction. It doesn't matter if you know where you're going, if you have a bunch of holes in your ship and you're going to sink before you get there. Right. And so honestly, it was so providential that I heard that today before talking to you, Adam, because that's kind of your thing. We need to fix the foundational things of what we're doing. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but at an organic grassroots level, right? I'm excited about being able to help both of us, what you're doing, what I'm doing, in helping companies, ships, plug the holes so that even if they know where they're going, they can get there. And so I know that might be a little bit of a weird what I'm excited about, but having that perspective makes me excited because I know we can do it. Anyway, I'll turn it over to you.
No, that's awesome. Leaders that want to go in a direction, if you have holes in your ship, the only direction you go is down. So That's and I think you speak a lot to empowerment, right? Empowering the people doing the work. I think again, from our perspectives, it's easy to do. So yeah, you get me excited just talking about what you're excited about. I've got a lot of things I'm excited about right now, personally and professionally. So I'll leave the personal ones on the side. Maybe we can talk about those afterwards. But professionally, I've got this opportunity to teach over 70 crafts people these micro learning sessions. And I've been trying to model some of them off of your podcast. You know, there's been some 5S and 3S as Paul Akers. Again, one of my favorites, 2-second lean. What a great place to start. And I tell everybody that, right? Go to the bathroom. But so, you know, between just the opportunity to have a company to work with that's going to allow me to influence our craft folks in a manner that's really going to benefit them in the long run. You know, we talk about, I've listened to podcasts on financial freedom for craft workers, and there's just, you know, so many different things that some people think that are just fundamental, that can really be life-changing for other folks who are in our industry. So I get really excited about that opportunity to just get in front of folks and, you know, we create these learning environments that are fun and energetic and most importantly, productive, right? Like, let's not go sit and learn and do a simulation about, and you know, all the lean consultants are going to hate me now, but let's not do a simulation on a Monopoly board or a Trouble board. Like, let's go to the field, let's go to the job site trailer, and let's learn about 3S and then apply 3S or 5S. And let's, you know, sort and sweep and straighten and do these things. That's how we fully comprehend and learn and are able to, again, just push the envelope of capability improvement. So that's what I'm excited about, and also just being here on this podcast in front of you. This is really exciting. So appreciate that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you got me amped up. You're talking my love language with all that. Getting to the site and actually doing it. You know, it's so interesting. Like, construction has such a need for training, and it's like, I wish I could tell the story. I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble. There's a really fantastic book about IPD. And I won't let out too much of the secret, but you and I are familiar with it. And a company that I was working with as a client had paid them for 2 hours to do a presentation. And I was excited because, like, I love IPD and I love integration. I love these concepts, similar stuff to what Dean talks about. And the person that I was talking to, I said, "How did it go?" They were like, "Oh, we just got paid for 2 hours. We spent 2 hours being bored to death." I have no idea what that person was saying. Why? What? That was such a missed opportunity. Like, when are people going to get that the way you present it and the way people learn, like, matters? And so, like, I love hearing you talk about it. There are fun, easy ways to do it. And we just got to go out there and give it our all, right? Anyway, did you have something?
I'll tell you, knowing your audience is everything. I always say, if a message is not received, it's never the receiver's issue. It's always the communicator's problem. And so, you know, if one isn't receiving that message, then there's an engagement. There's an environment that's not being cultured intentionally for a learning, for maybe you're not tapping in the current conditions. But yeah, I hear you loud and clear. Again, fundamentally, from just a learning lesson, we've been taught our whole life that, hey, a teacher's going to stand up here and I'm going to teach you how to do something.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work, at least for most brains. I would say that most folks actually learn when we get out in the field and we put a shovel in the ground, and then we say, well, we do utility locates and that sort of thing first, of course, A11, right? But that's when you really, truly learn, is through experience.
Amen. Amen. Well, one more scaffolding thing before we get started. What do you, as a professional, and I mean that, you're doing a lot of stuff in ops and training and lean and integration. What do you see changing in our industry? Young people seem to ask this question more than almost any others. They kind of want to know where they want to head, where they need to head with the industry. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
or a thought, sorry.
No, we're running long, aren't we?
No, I just didn't want to. I got to be clear because if you take Adam plus a question plus his knowledge, we would be here for 5 hours. Anyway, go ahead.
Again, you're very humbling here. I'll tell you what I see changing, and I get super excited about it, is geographic scheduling. We talk about tax planning. We talked about, small batches. And this is really, I think, COVID, I think, is driving a lot of this. We got to keep crews separated. We got to keep, we talk a little bit about flow and getting folks through a building. And so I think folks are starting to value that a little bit more. Geographic scheduling, I think, is what I see changing the most. I think people are really starting to pick up on how I can flow people through my space, making sure that we're phased in such a manner that flow is established on a project site. So that's what I see really changing the most. And I think COVID's really helping to drive that as we try to keep crews separated and we do what we need to do to socially distance folks on the job site.
Awesome. I love that. Because that's really, that could be a whole podcast topic in and of itself, but just one quick thought for me. Back in the day, and even me, we would create this big old master schedule without a lot of really good sequence drawings with descriptors, and you give it to somebody and you're like, hey, review this 75 pages of a schedule, not tied to a logistics plan, not tied to sequence drawings, not tied to a basis of schedule. And it's like, oh yeah, that looks great, and it is not great. It's not specific enough to where it's going, and it doesn't have enough flow. Anyway, I'm sorry to cut.
So you just jogged a thought in my head, and I'll share this with you, podcast or not. I was asked recently, how are folks driving the last planner system back into their schedules, their CPM schedules, and or how do you take those milestones and drive them into your last planner system? And I told them I think there's a step missing there, that you really it's very complex to take this, like you said, 75-page master schedule and then drive it down into a daily activity. There's this integration, this bring the actual expert on board who's going to do it. And that's where we start to talk about these phased plans. And now we're just talking about, okay, flow, like how we've got this overall plan and we know our milestones that we need to hit. Now this missing piece that folks are starting to pick up on. And so again, getting back to what's changing, I think people are understanding that there's this middle step of, okay, now we understand what needs to happen from a whole and how are we going to do it? And once we establish we're going to do it in this fashion, then we get down to that daily planner of, okay, we know how we're going to flow through this space. Now, what are you going to do on each day from a weekly work plan perspective? And so that's the whole roadblock management, constraint removal process of funneling down to the last planner system. So again, sorry for that side note, but you got me engaged there.
Well, so there you go. I appreciate you answering those questions. I feel like we know you a little bit better. People are able to get rapport. I'm sure this won't be the first time, or no, not the first time. It is the first time. It won't be the last time that you're on the podcast. And so let's go ahead and kick right into it. The conflict for today is that, for anybody listening, you may be valuing productivity over capability. And so that's the conflict. That's the bridge that we're going to gap today. And so, Adam, I'd love it if you can kick us off here. Let's introduce our topic and start heading down that direction, boss.
So how many times has this audience heard, just get it done? I don't care how you do it. Just get it done. Get it done. Get it done. I don't care how you do it. That's the wrong opinion from my perspective. I do care how you do it. That's important to me, how you do it. I care that you ask questions how you do it. I don't want to tell you how to do it. I want to give you parameters, guidelines to get it done. And then I want to learn from you based on how you perceive the best way to get it done. There are best practices out there. Those best practices have been established through process mapping, through true analyzation. And so there is one best way to do something. Everything. We know process. We think about process often. There is one best way to do something. The only way you're going to get there is through trial and error, trial of different processes. And so getting things done is very important in construction. It is very important. But the capability to get more things done is going to drive getting things done in production. So again, a little bit of confusing words there, I think, but even when I mention it, I always mention productivity first. When I wrote the email to Jason, hey, I want to do a podcast on productivity versus capability. And it's like, wait, capability is more important. So I got to put that word first. But it's even out of my mouth, and I scream capability development. I still have a certain amount of value that I place and emphasis I place on productivity over capability. I do place a ton of value on capability development because when one can focus on how to do things more efficient, safer, with better quality, that then allows them to get more done the next time they do it versus just get it done. You're fighting, UDIs, undesirable effects is what Eliud Goldratt calls from the goal, or it's not luck. UDIs, undesirable effects, and you're fighting through these that are very complex. So again, hopefully you'll edit some of this, but the main purpose, the main message that I want to drive home right now is that a lot of folks are overvaluing productivity and undervaluing capability, and really need to understand the connection between the two in order to benefit productivity.
I love that. And just so you know, my trick, what I do is I'm like, no, I'm going to edit the whole thing. And then I just carte blanche, just send the whole thing out. And it's too late. I'm just kidding. I won't do that.
It's fine. It's all good. Hey, sometimes again, it's great because I'm not perfect. You're not perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes we ramble, but it's what is important is that we get down to that root message that it doesn't matter how much tape that we tape right now, but that we're learning how to make podcasts better in the future, right? Like,
and that's a good message. I don't want to overshadow your message, but for any leaders out there, it's so exhausting to keep up in an image, a pretended image that we are perfect, right? And redefining success to say, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm going to PDCA everything in my life. I'm going to get better. I'm going to learn. I'm going to listen. And I'm not perfect. So when I make that mistake, I'll apologize. I'll empathize with somebody who I may have hurt or wasted their time or whatever, but I'm not going to get down on myself because everyone's doing their best for the most part. And, unless you drive a Chevy, but I'm just kidding. Don't stop listening to the podcast anyway. but we're all doing our best. So redefine success of, I'm imperfect. I'm going to make mistakes is so liberating to your point, right? Not only on a project level, but on a perfect level. I hope everyone heard your message there.
To be vulnerable is very difficult, Jason. It's very uncomfortable. And I think, one of the things that we find while we do this and try to instigate and initiate change is that it becomes very uncomfortable. And you talk about getting outside your comfort zone. So, And again, just to value capability development. See, I had to think about it there. But to truly develop capability development over productivity, that's going to take some getting outside. Like, hey, I'm not going to go install work this afternoon. Yeah. I'm going to talk to my crew about how they're installing it to improve. And that's a really tough thing, counterintuitive approach to our industry.
I think that's fantastic. And I've realized that when analyzing, and I don't know much about sports, just so you guys know, when I was born, wherever the sports part of the brain is, mine was missing. I don't understand it. I played rugby for like a year.
That's it.
I was like, knees, human being with the ball, tackle, and that's all I get. Like, and sometimes they'd throw me up in the air to catch the ball. That's all I knew. But I don't understand sports other than the coaching aspect of it, right? Like when somebody says, hey, let's go talk about this one-on-one outside of the team, I'm like, that's not how they do sports coaching. Everyone's out there together. I always take it back to sports, what I know about sports. When you're talking about capability, if somebody was coaching a runner or a position in football, I don't even know what a position is, but or anybody, and you're like, I want them to run faster. The coach would not just say, I need you to run faster. I need you to run faster. What would they do? They would say, we're going to do 2-a-days. We're going to be stretching. I'm going to show you how to push it beyond your limits. There's some exercises. There's some mental development. Like they're going to fix the capability of that human being, and that capability will have them run faster. The coach doesn't get paid to just yell at him, right? And so why do we in construction, hearing your example, think that I can just yell at people and it'll fix it versus coaching them and training them? I did a good job on that, didn't I?
That was amazing. Amen. Listen, so I've got the sports part of your brain covered. You just rely on me for that. You got me there. It reminds me a lot of the story. I think it was referred to as the hammer story in a book that this really intelligent guy, wise man, that once wrote. But having more capabilities than just being able to swing a hammer, right? And I think again, getting back to your sports analogy, and I think that's so important to realize when we're successful on a field and we're trying to get better. We also have visual reminders of where we currently are, right? So we talk about a scoreboard and it's got the score and the time left and the timeouts. And so, that sends a quick message of feedback of current reality of where I am. And so I would encourage us as leaders in the industry to think about feedback, think about shortening that loop. Again, because we're talking about capability development. One of the hardest things in the world to do is say, hey, Jason, you're not really very good at podcasts. I don't really mean that very often, but to give like true. No, I honestly, I've listened to pretty much 178, I think.
This one's 190.
So I'm on 178. I'm a little bit behind, but not my real opinion there at all. But to be able to have honest, radical candor feedback of, hey, like I really care for you personally and I want to make you better. And so these are the steps to take. I think we miss that ball a lot from just a feedback perspective, because they're very difficult conversations to have.
I agree. And
podcasts are awesome, by the way.
Thank you. That's super funny. I was, it's interesting, not to get off too much of a side tangent, but like I have so in my morning routine, when I go through my resolutions and stuff, I wrote down certainty, significance, variety, love and connection, growth and contribution. And if I get tipped over, like, let's say there's one day where there aren't a bunch of downloads, or I don't know, just whatever. Like, I'm like, do people really like the podcast? And I start to get pouty. I remember, wait a minute, I'm here to give. I'm here to grow. You know what I mean? I'm not here for praise, and I'm not here to make money. You know what I mean? Well, part of it, I need to make money eventually, but like, but you have to remind yourself about that stuff, right? And so one quick thought. Go ahead.
Sorry, can I tell you what I do for that?
Go ahead.
So I've got these cross bracelets, which you see here now.
Very good.
And if you send me your address, I'll send you one. But they, so if I'm having a rough day or if I need good energy, I'll turn it so that the long end of the cross is facing me, right? And so, man, I need some prayers or something's going on, or and then if I'm having a good day, I'll turn it around like this, and I'll send blessings out to the world. And so this is just again a way for me to remember that it's much bigger than me personally. Kind of like you said, we all have tough days. We all have great days, and we need to remember to both share those tough days with the ones we love, but also share those great days with the ones we love and those around us always. So
I like that.
If you send me your address, what's your favorite color?
Well, it's pink, but I don't usually tell people that. It's pink or purple. Great. Pink or purple. Yeah, let's do it. All
right.
I know I should like, blue or something manly like green, but I'm digging pink. See, this is more probably like a purple salmon color. And that's when people are like, you're wearing a pink shirt. I'm like, salmon, bro. It's salmon.
I got you. You should never have to clarify your color. But yeah, I will send you one. I think it's strong. I also have these, again, so I'll run on big tangents, and I'm starting a parking lot of next podcast, by the way. But forgot where I was going with that. But we can.
Yeah, I can't edit that out. That's too good. That's like, they're like, wait a minute, Adam's perfect. And I just proved that that's not true. So now there's more connection here.
If I beat my head in the right place, it'll come back to me. Or if I find myself doing the same thing again, it'll come back to me. So.
At the wrong moment, won't it? Just when you can't speak up for something.
Yeah, right when you ask your next question, Boom.
Right there. Well, so one thing that I was thinking when I talked to you or when I was listening to you, and that's the other thing with podcasts is like when you're really paying attention, you forget what you were going to say, right? But in a podcast, just like you're doing, you have to just pay attention, right? Or you're going to miss those nuggets. Anyway, when you were talking,
it's so important. It's so important in general because we're not here to just tell you we're here to get better together and connect our worlds. And I don't just want to tell you what's on my mind because that would bore you. Right? We want interaction.
Well, I love that. And so one thing that was on my mind when you were talking was, I don't know who, and don't tell me because I'm sure you're not allowed to, but whatever company's paying you for the 70 craft workers, I just want to kudos, right there. That is amazing for a company to have insight into their own company, to see that there's a gap. Here's where we are. Here's where we want to be. And to be willing to put their money where their mouth is and actually go do that training is remarkable. So even though it might not be appropriate for me to mention their name, or if you want to, go ahead. But yeah, on the podcast, I would love for you to tell them kudos for me, because that is value and capability, right? Training, or the morning crew preparation huddle, or to your point, maybe even a huddle right after lunch to regroup everybody. Anything that we do to develop that capability, man, that gives me hope that we can head in a good direction, that there are owners out there like that. I see you want to say something. Go ahead, boss.
I always want to say something, but Langston Construction is the name of the organization.
Okay.
Fantastic outfit. They've been in Piedmont, South Carolina for 50 years. Good old boys, got relationships, and that's everything. They've built levels of trust through implementing craft training and things like that. And I really want to I'm excited to let you in on everything we're doing there, but I'll just, Ray Dalio's. Are you familiar with Ray Dalio's story? Investment company. What was his?
He wrote the book Principles, or no, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong person.
No, you are. Yeah. Principles, Dalio's. So for his financial firm, he took in, sorry, it's going to drive me crazy, and I'm not going to be able to focus until I know what firm it is. So, Bridgewater Associates.
Okay,
and
I've heard of them.
He made player cards, so they have an internal app where folks evaluate each other. And once you have, so that eliminates a lot of the bias, right? Because you're constantly asking for evaluations on different points of where you are in your career, and whether those are soft skills or technical skills or improvement opportunities or things like that. You become very self-aware of what other people think of you. And so Langston has fully supported coming up with what we're referring to as craft training cards.
Very cool.
And so they're basically going to be, concrete, form, finisher, place. These are things that we self-perform, or operator skills. What are they best on from an equipment perspective? Where do they live? What projects have they been on in the past? When's their birthday? And so these kind of highlights, if you give me a crew and say, hey, these 12 people are coming to your job to pour concrete next week, it's like, okay, I've got a plan and I know the steps that need to happen, but I don't really know the people that I have to put in each step. And so here I can figure out, well, this person's best at placing concrete, or this person's best at operating the skid steer, and I can put people, to use a term we're both familiar with, in the right seats on the bus to be able to drive that bus a little faster. So I'm excited about that program, that opportunity. And it's not a top-down deal. It's very much, I hate to use the word bottom up because it just seems so disrespectful, but it's boots on the ground.
Ooh, can I say it?
Like.
Can I say it's a total participation effort?
I like that.
Okay, I got you. Meaning you're taking everyone with you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, we lean pretty much. Most things lean came from the Toyota way. I think a lot of us can say that. Mm-hmm. And the Toyota way, is capability development, it's capability improvement. They get, on average, 40 ideas from each one of their employees per year. How many employees does Toyota have? That's incredible. Mm-hmm. And you've got to filter through some of the ones that, maybe that's not such a great idea. But there's also ones that it could really change your business model. And when you look at them, you're like, ooh, that's going to be a big change. Well, that's probably the one you should start with. So, again, kind of a sidebar there, but we really got to take a page book out of Toyota and develop the capability to develop capability. Make it intentional, make it visual, make it easy, make it fun, and make it an encouraging environment. So, quick reflection. I should have never said the podcast thing. Like, please edit the podcast thing out. Like having crucial conversations, because I love your podcast. I really, really do. And I don't want you to be offended by that at all. I think your podcasts are amazing and exactly what this industry needs. And so I don't want you to have any like hard feelings about that whatsoever. That is, I know they say a lot of truth in jest, but that's not even the case here. I promise you that. Promise.
Well, thank you for that. It didn't even, if it makes you feel better, it didn't even register in my mind. So it's been bothering
me since we hung up. So,
well, I'm sorry about that. No, it was an example, and no, I absolutely nothing on my end. Sorry. So maybe that means I wasn't paying attention, but I'm not offended at all.
Oh, good. A couple other things where I lost my train of thought was that complexities, right? We introduced a lot of complexities in construction. And making things simple is really important. You're a big Patrick Lencioni fan. I'm a huge Nicholas Modig fan. This is Lean is made it simple for me. 3 things: flow, efficiency, visualization, and continuous improvement. With those 3 things, you have Lean. And understanding the different concepts versus tools is important. So that was where I was heading when I forgot.
Well, I was going to pick up on a topic that I think will jar your memory, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Okay. And I have This Is Lean right next to me. I need to get into one of his remote courses. That would be like, yes. One day if you can teach me how to do that, man.
I did that with DPR. So, DPR actually let me go back in March due to COVID and all that. And Dean snuck me in a course in June into a Nicholas Modig course, and it was amazing. It was called Operational Excellence, and you have to take it. You have to meet Nicholas. I can make that introduction, I think. I've developed a little bit of rapport with him. May he get him on here. Like, that would be, we're going to do that. That's, okay. Hold on. Where's my parking lot? Here.
That's it. I love that parking lot. We're going to fill that parking lot out.
As long as we drive them. So we're for everybody listening on the podcast, we took just a quick intermission break there for a second. We're back. The one thing that I want to, can I tell them why?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So my daughter's had a little bit of a babysitting gig, right? I have twin girls. They're 14, and they make $20 an hour each of them to watch 4 children. So I had to support what supports our house and make sure I took care of critical path. So thank you for allowing that opportunity, Jason.
Well, that's awesome. So if I don't get enough work to keep Elevate Construction afloat, I'm gonna volunteer to help your kiddos babysit. $20 an hour. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a deal for you, huh?
I'm telling you what, I've got at least 7 babysitting kids. 7 times 20. I don't math very good. What that $440 an hour?
I'll be your project manager. Yes, sir. That's $140 an hour.
I like that. Okay. So one thing that was really coming into my mind, there's a book I'm reading right now called Drift into Failure. I don't know if you've read it before. There's so many books that we recommend. I'm not even saying read it. I'm just saying, so in the book, it talks about complex systems, and that there are some things where we really go back to like a Newtonian, a Newton, there's a cause and effect kind of philosophy where if something happens, somebody did something bad, right? We can find that cause. But the argument that they present in the book is that complex systems are sometimes too complex to even be able to determine that. Everybody wants the aha moment that says, this is what went wrong. This specific thing, we fix this, everything gets fixed. But there's humans, there's chaos, there's circumstances, there's systems. There are all these other factors in these complex systems. Anyway, and what it talks about is that companies tend to drift into failure when bureaucratically they have a bunch of people coming to work every day that think they're doing their job well, but they're in a complex system that is drifting towards failure. And so when somebody says, well, something went wrong, who can I go blame? It's usually the process, like we always say. And this is probably a perfect time to talk about your chart, unless you think there's a better one where your accountability meter. But what they talk about is that complex systems is very hard to just pin it on somebody. And so that is an advocacy for principle or value-based leadership, principle or value-based led organizations, where if everybody, and you and I experienced this at DPR, right? We knew no matter what we did, we had to have integrity, right? We had to have fun. You knew exactly what you were there to do. And so on your own, you could head in a principle and a value-based direction instead of interacting with systems that maybe you didn't fully understand or I didn't fully understand and drift into failure. And so I think that book right now for me is proving your point. We have to focus on training. We have to focus on principles. We have to focus on values and have people that are, from a capability standpoint, can head in that direction on their own instead of pinballing back and forth on policies and procedures that can, even if they're doing their best, drift an organization into failure, where you have a large, and some of the examples that they mentioned in the book are planes crashing or a large oil drilling accident or you know what I mean? These are situations where the company drifted into failure and the human beings behind the systems were doing their best day in and day out. But at the end of the day, it wasn't principle or value led from a capability standpoint. Anyway, go ahead. I can see you have something to say.
So you always spark something for me to say. And as I've got a whole page of notes here and I don't even know where to start, but you hit me with a book. And so I'll hit you with a book, Essentialism by Greg McCune. I had the ability to meet him a couple of years ago at an LCI Congress. And he spoke during his keynote of the collapse of societies. And when you go back and study the Roman Empire and the failure of the Roman Empire and some of the other historical collapses, when you root cause analyze that, you find that people became comfortable. People stopped doing what got them there, that they stopped improving on systems. He talks about complexities and such that we made a professional or we made an expert that does all of these different independent activities. And as we develop these experts, things become more complex. And then these worlds of weaving experts between one another become even more complex, and to the point where you lose what to focus on. And it's essentialism. Again, the point of the book is to really maintain focus on what's important, what's driving value. And so very relevant here when you think about how capability development ultimately will drive productivity.
I love that. And I love that book.
Yeah, great book. Great guy. You also mentioned systems thinking, Jason. I've done a lot of studying with Hal Maycomer on systems thinking. Are you familiar with Hal?
Yeah, I'm familiar. I don't know him very well.
You said systems thinking, and when you mentioned systems thinking earlier, it really triggered some thoughts that Hal Maycomer, who, again, if you don't know Hal, you've got to know Hal. He's written several books that have helped the industry. Pocket Sensei is one of his that they gave out at the LCI Congress not long ago. But Hal has done a lot of time thinking about systems thinking. He taught me a course. I became a lean construction coaching professional or something along. I think that's the official credential. But he talks about vicious systems and virtuous. So Hal Maycomer has taught me a ton about systems. There are two types of systems in this world. There's one which is a virtuous system, which goes on forever and self-sustaining and continues to have this balancing loop that allows it to grow and develop with current conditions and reality. And then there's a vicious system where something's out of tilt and you've got a balancing loop that maybe you're missing something or one piece, and this thing just goes out of control into chaos. And so, and we make modifications to small things, right? We talk a little bit about small J, big J change. And as somebody is going through at this production rate and they're going through this productivity, hopefully you're on this slight gradual increase. But when you introduce a little bit of change, or if you introduce too much change, that productivity rate will drop in the form of a J before it goes back up and exceeds where it was before. If you end up making too much change, people lose faith that they're going to come back to better than the way they were doing it before. So again, I don't want to make that too complex, but think small J is small change, incremental change, not making wholesale changes, because a lot of people resist. You often talk the rule of thirds, super applicable here when we start, trying to convince folks to do things in other ways. So,
And that goes back to capability again, right? Not only are we increasing the capability, but we don't want to overburden the capability of the system, right, with these changes. So that ties exactly into your message. And you had a couple of notes here that you emailed me. I think you've done a really good job talking about capability and productivity. You said the capability development helps understand the current condition of an organization. What did you mean by that?
Read that one again. That sounded good.
Capability development helps understand the current condition of the organization.
So when you talk about capability development, I'd be lost not to throw out a Japanese word, kata. And I am not a fan of using these lean terms, Japanese words. Call it what you want to call it. We're talking about improvement. And so kata is a 4-step process to capability development. You start with the end goal in sight. What are we trying to do? What is the goal? What is the direction in which we want to march? Step 1. Step 2, where are we? What is our current condition? What are we doing right now? Step 3 is, okay, getting all the way there is a big J change, and we're probably not going to keep people's interest before we get them back to their same productivity level. So let's make an incremental change. Let's make a milestone in the direction to which we want to go, small enough that people will maybe lose a little bit of productivity, but still have faith that they're going to regain and then some. And then, so we'll remind you, step 1, right, is goal direction. Step 2 is current conditions. Step 3 is intermediate milestone. I'll use that word for us construction folks. And then the 4th and most important is being open to try different experimental ways to get to that intermediate milestone.
Very nice.
So then once you accomplish that, repeat, rinse and repeat, right? PDCA.
Yeah. And I like that. There was a guy who wrote a book called Own the Gap, and he talked about, so basically it's based around that same method, right? And so if we know our capabilities and we know where we want to head, then we close the gap on our capabilities, right? Meaning we increase the capability of our people, the training and everything else, the time, the resources. We do small J changes, and then the productivity, the financials, everything else will start to close with it, right? I really think you kind of tied that up with a bow really nicely. And so the message that I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is focus on capability, analyze capability, and increase capability. And when you do so, you'll increase production. You'll increase productivity. And I think that's a beautiful message. Tenfold. Yeah. And I keep forgetting, but I've got to see your accountability meter. We talked about.
Okay. You're just going to go out and hit me with it. So you hit me with a book. Can I hit you back with a book?
Yeah, go ahead.
You hit Own the Gap. I'm going to look it up and find it. I'm going to hit you with the Fred Factor. It's about a mailman who goes just above and beyond. It's an easy read, 100 pages or so, but the guy who just goes above and beyond, and he's an owner of his work and everything he does, and builds a trust level that's unbelievable. But so since you were so blunt in asking, we've talked about this again in systems format, where I have a system of holding people accountable. Okay. And I do this through what I call the accountability meter. I don't really use an official visual, but I have drawn it for the crew. And you can see here, I guess it's on the left, Jason, where we start. Is that right?
Yep.
Start with awareness.
It says awareness. Yep.
It looks backwards to me, so I'm just kind of reading backwards, but we're going to roll with it. So once you make somebody aware, and again, we're talking about a process. We're talking about something that is done. And so once you make them aware of how you want to do something, Then you educate them, and you educate them on how that process should be done. Can you just take like a snippet or screenshot so I don't have to hold that?
I don't know exactly how to do it, but you don't. They've got it. So
Okay.
just go ahead and read it to us.
After we make somebody aware of this process of what we want them to do, maybe it's install a foundation. We make them aware, right? We don't want to tell them how to do it because they might have a better way to do it than we do. And if they're not performing, then okay, maybe we might have to educate them on our expectations or how we expect them to perform this task. Maybe we tighten the guardrails a little bit because we're learning a little bit about this person. We're gaining trust. We're understanding. And then if they're still not getting it after you've educated them, then you kind of turn to a coaching mentality, right? So You've gone from like, okay, now they know what needs to happen and they're not doing it. So let's coach them and try to figure out why. And then if your coaching isn't working, right? So now you're kind of like, think of a car meter. So 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000, like we're starting to rev up, still not working. It's getting frustrating. Well, now stop looking at the person and turn around and look at your process. Or is what you're teaching, is what you're coaching, is what you've made them aware of, does that make sense? Maybe try it on somebody else. Is it your process? And really look at, are other people succeeding while experiencing the same process? And if that holds true, right? Then, we're starting to get into the yellow and the red that this person just might not be fit for this role. And so now we want to start out of respect for both the person and the company, right? There's a whole podcast dedicated to that as well, of just having respect for people enough to get them in the right role. And then you start that accountability meter over again and you make them aware. And then if you start to get there on a couple of different roles, then the person's going to understand, again, through this immediate feedback. I think it's very important when we talk about developing capabilities that we also talk about feedback and how important that is. Does this person know the expectation, and is this person performing the expectation? Because they say the last to discover water is fish, right? So if you're in this environment and you think you're doing things right and nobody's telling you anything different, then how are you to know you're not meeting expectations? And so feedback is very important. And that my accountability meter, again, is just a way to encourage feedback because it gets frustrating. And when your feedback's not taking place, then analyze your process. When that doesn't work, look for new roles and potentially splitting ways.
I love that.
Out of respect.
And to that point, I got some feedback a while back that said, don't, and I talked about sometimes you have to let somebody go, and they were like, well, don't go there first. And I love your accountability meter that, there are a number of steps there, but absolutely, if doing that a couple times still isn't solving the problem, then there might be somewhere where they're happier. Right. And so this has been amazing. We're going to close this out. So we have so many things on the parking lot. We're going to have to just go ahead and schedule the next podcast like right away. But the message that I got from today was increase the capability of our people, and that drives productivity. And then you said tenfold. We've talked about accountability. Or you have rather. You've talked about training. You've talked about dedicating time. You've talked about not overburdening people. You've talked about small J change versus big J change. All of these things, and especially the accountability meter, speaks to capability first to drive productivity instead of the old-fashioned way of doing it. Or maybe it's not even old-fashioned. Maybe it's just wrong-fashioned of just screaming at people and saying, go faster, go faster, go faster, without helping them get there. And, helping somebody along their way is a beautiful thing. And so we've got 2 more minutes. Adam, what challenge would you give to anybody listening today? What closing remarks do you have?
So closing remark, I love the children in the background. That is so awesome. Like, I just have to acknowledge that I love that. It's real. It's real life. It's vulnerability. It's to me, that's amazing. So I'll donate 2 of my minutes to saying that. I'm like, thank you for that. Honestly, sincerely, I mean that. Last closing thoughts and challenge. I guess I would challenge this group listening to really, really hit the pause button and reflect, right? Too often as an industry, we continue to work and we don't pause and reflect. But pause and reflect and understand how much time do you spend on developing capabilities? Does your company have the ability to develop capability? Do you make intentional time to develop capability? Or do you value productivity more? Is it more important that that person gets concrete poured, or that person evaluates the process in which they get concrete poured? Some non-value work may add value in the long run, is kind of what I'm saying. From a challenge perspective, I'm really excited about this because I've kind of stewed on this. I've heard this question frequent, so I've come prepared. We need folks in the skilled trades desperately. I've read facts of, for every 5 that either pass away or retire, that only 1 enters the workforce. There are taboos in this industry, the screaming, yelling, mad types that we talk about, and stereotypes happen for reasons. But as we know with today's world and society, that things change, and change is important and brings huge value. And so I would challenge the audience to come up with some creative ways to get folks to enter skilled trades, whether those folks are, young in high school, determining whether they need to go to college, or if those folks are determining whether career technical schools are better for them, or if they're going right into an apprenticeship. How do we encourage folks to look at skilled trades and to value them as much as going to get a college degree? How do we change that narrative? You've had a podcast recently on, I make as much as a doctor. I do make as much as a doctor. And I don't have near the debt that a doctor does. So, we're looking at funny things that are entertaining and exciting, that are going to get young people fired up, veterans fired up, reentry programs fired up, like all these different avenues of people who need served, that we get them fired up and energetic about an industry that is in desperate need of their help and the value that they can bring from their different perspectives. So challenge, how do we get folks fired up and excited about the skilled trades? How do we energize the next generation to take ownership and go and have pride in their work? How do we distinguish the folks who are just there to be a labor force versus those who are there to really be a craft worker, to have a skilled trade? And so, again, passions of mine, all in developing our craft and making them better, both professionally and personally. So on we go, right?
On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.